You're listening to the Home Staging Show podcast. I'm your host, Cindy Lin. This is the show where we talk about all things real estate, home staging, and styling your home to live and to sell. Welcome back to season 7, and this is episode 2. Our show is brought to you by the Staging Assistant. It's more than an inventory system. Manage your leads, your proposals, your clients, and your stage houses on your desktop, tablet, or phone. With a Staging Assistant, you will know what you own, where it is, and when it's returning quickly and easily. Create your design and packing list from the comfort of your home so you can hit the ground running when you go into your warehouse. Created by stagers, specifically for stagers, is the only tool you need to manage your growing staging business. For more information, visit stagingassistant.com. Hey guys, welcome back to season 7, episode 2. Today I'm interviewing Nicole Hamilton. She's the founder of homeownering.com, which is a company dedicated to help homeowners to get great financial outcomes. She launched homeownering.com to give homeowners and homebuyers more sophisticated insight into the potential real estate outcomes of what is often their biggest asset, their home. Homeownering gives homebuyers and homeowners tools to give independent insight into home equity, home improvement, and home financing. And she launched a comprehensive guide to home ownership in 2017. So on today's show, we actually talk a lot about both sides of the coin in terms of how homeowners can maximize profits and values for their homes. And I feel like Nicole also brings a unique perspective because she is a serial home buyer and seller. She's also done a lot of research, a lot of reading on both sides of financial issues, mortgages, etc., etc. She's also the author of Avoid the Money Pit, Turn Your Home into a Financial Powerhouse, which I had the opportunity to read before the interview. I find the book is very easy to read and very easy to digest, and I highly recommend it. I find that a lot of books on the market are usually very difficult to read, and I think Nicole has a really nice way to break down the issues into very nice small chunks, and that's very digestible and easy to understand. And just a quick announcement, if you don't know yet, I'm trying a new format in the new year where I'm live broadcasting the interviews with our guest experts online. So you can now watch the podcast interviews online while we're recording. So we recorded about 4 episodes so far, and there's one coming up with Amy Powers this Friday. So on this particular episode with Amy, I'm going to be interviewing her about target demographic and psychographics for buyers, as well as educating agents on the value of home staging. You can find out the guest lineup and sign up for a live webcast on our website. I'm going to put a link to our show notes so that you can check it out. And new information will be updated as I'm in the process of booking more guests for the show for the upcoming season. I'll be updating that blog post as I finalize interview schedules one by one. I also announce it on the podcast and also emails as well. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, you can do so by going to our website and access the show notes. So that's it. Without further ado, let's start the show. That's great. So thank you for joining us on the show today. I really appreciate it. And I was so intrigued by your business, actually. I think it's such a great business concept. So what made you decide to start your business, homeownering.com?
Well, I started a financial technology company called Tactile Finance after a bad mortgage experience, and I was the managing director of a data analytics company. And I started this company to make tools that visualized homeowner and home buyer outcomes, financial outcomes. And we sold it because of the business model. We sold it through intermediaries like credit unions, loan officers, and also some real estate professionals. But we found that a lot of the really important pieces that consumers can benefit from weren't getting to the consumer. And it made me very frustrated. I spent many years working on it, really to provide some really powerful tools to the consumer. And so I just decided, forget it. I'm just going to go directly to consumer. And that's how homeownering started. But it was really a place where homeowners can get good financial outcomes, sort of learning insider secrets and with really easy tools.
I just really love that because I think it's really important to give especially consumers, these accessible tools that they can learn and how to like leverage their financial outcome. Because, for example, like I've always wanted to invest in real estate, and but it's really scary for me, and I also did not have enough information. But also mainly Bay Area real estate, it's very crazy, so it was never really the right time to get in, I felt like. And of course, hindsight is always 2020, because the house I first started staging was 250,000, and now it's like 1.5. Yeah, it's insane. But so it's kind of crazy how, for example, the Bay Area home market now, with the starter home, you're looking at least $1 million investment into a home.
Yes.
And so I really love concepts like this, where you explain the home equity and then mortgage and all that stuff. So I think those are kind of things that we don't learn in school, unfortunately. So in a way, we are financial illiterate on many, many different things that are really important with our lives. So I really love your book, actually, because it really breaks down really well.
One thing I think it's important to note is that often people feel stupid around, the financial concepts of the home. And what I realized is that, I was doing incredibly complex data analysis in my former life. And I realized that even having done that, you still have all these barriers between you and getting a good outcome, because there are mortgage professionals and there are other people who have their own interests, and not to say that they're not bad people, but they have a goal, and that's to sell their products. And so it's really hard, actually. So I want no one to feel stupid about any of this stuff. I think it's my goal is just empower people like me, like I was. I really didn't know a lot that I could do to get a good outcome. And once you know these things, then that seems much more simple.
Yeah, and the other thing I really love about you is that, like, I read in your book, for example, you're a serial home buyer and home seller. And I think that probably gives you a lot of insights into how the process works. Because I think for most people who haven't gone through a home buying process, or even have gone through it once, or a home selling process, it's still very daunting. So what are some of the biggest lessons you learned through these processes?
Well, I guess one of the biggest things I learned is that most homeowners have the majority of their net worth in their homes, and that's a massively important fact. And a lot of people don't have clarity into the decisions that impact that net worth. And I know when I bought my first home, I didn't know exactly how big the check would be when I sold the home, which is crazy if you think about it, right? I mean, that's where your money is. And so in your case, a $250,000 house that sold over 1.1 whatever, then, you have these other fees, you have taxes, you have the percentage to the real estate agent, you have the actual percentage that you negotiate with the agent. It's usually around the time of the sale, right? Because you're negotiating, is it one agent? Is it two agents? And so all of that plays into it. So I think, there's just all these little decisions that affect how much money you actually have in your pocket, and all the complexity around it sort of muddies that. But if you just keep your eye on that ball, that's really what is most important to you.
Yeah, and I think the really great thing about you as well is because you have been on both sides. So I'm always interested to find out from buyers. So when you're looking to buy a home, what exactly are you looking for?
Well, I think certainly emotion plays a role, right? When I've bought my homes, it's for many emotional reasons. The area, there's the school system good, is it near people? There are all these sort of non-financial reasons that you just can't deny. And also, does it make you feel good? That's actually incredibly important. And then you want to think about, or what I've learned to think about really is area appreciation is actually very hyper local. So in the area, I live in Brooklyn. Certainly Brooklyn is a massive city. It's probably is bigger than, Cleveland and things just on its own. So, but in other, even counties or towns, different streets, have different appreciation. And now we have the luxury of having a lot of access to data. And so there's a lot of real estate data out there that you can use to look at that. So appreciation, both local and hyper local. Another big one when you're buying a home is the quality of the home. Homes that are good quality, meaning that you won't have massive repairs or, major systems failing and things like that, is huge, because those can really erode your profits or your it'll take a lot of your money. That's a nightmare for any home buyer, and you can't necessarily avoid it. Like, I bought a 110-year-old home that I'm actually in right now, and I just had a major repair in the basement because the pipes are 110 years old.
Oh my gosh.
There's some things you just can't avoid, but to be aware, you're really aware of what, and try to buy a high quality home. Older homes aren't necessarily bad. They're also really well constructed often. So those are a couple things. You just want to keep your maintenance costs low and be able to increase the value of your home over time. So those are the two main aspects.
And so as a serial home buyer, you probably have come across home staging, right?
Oh, for sure.
And so what do you feel like, how do you feel about home staging? Do you feel like it's misleading the buyers, or it's actually helping the buyers throughout the home buying process?
Well, I had an amazing experience with the very first home that I sold with a realtor who was incredibly meticulous about the staging of the apartment. Mm-hmm. And so from that, I really came to very much respect it, because I actually interviewed, I think, 3 different agents, and the first agent priced the apartment about $100,000 less. That was than this other one, and didn't want to do any staging and just wanted to sell it. And then I met this other person. I really wish I could remember his name, because he is just an amazing individual, really talented, and he was adamant that I should do many things to it, paint it, replace the linens, replace the towels with big fluffy towels, buy a certain pillow, have lilies in the vase, all these very, very specific details, completely declutter the apartment. And it looked absolutely fabulous. And I think it ended up appealing to so many people because it looked clean and fresh, and you could walk in there and sort of imagine this great life that you would have if you were in there, which looked completely different than the apartment that I first was going to.
That's great. That's really great, because I think it's really important too. I just want
to mention that he ended up getting like a record price for it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. Statistically speaking, home staging has been a very effective marketing strategy for selling a home. But there are still sellers and agents out there who are resistant against it. Sometimes it's hard. I mean, it does take persuasion. And once people see it works, then they realize it's such a better way to really package the product, the house, to put it on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is the process of selling a home like?
Well, so first you want to think about what your home is worth. And you can do this yourself. In fact, we have a lot of resources. It's basically the way that the method that appraisers use. So you can look at, the last 6 months of home sales in your area and really kind of zero in on, what your home is worth today, because markets change very often. The thing that I would recommend as well is real estate agents really want your business. And so you can interview them and they will tell you what your home is worth. And that's often extremely good information. And I would recommend that you go to agents who have sold exactly the exact kind of house that you have or apartment that you have in the exact neighborhood. So the market is very specific. The buyers are very specific. Agents will know how to sell to those specific buyers. And that's all really important. And that's free. You can get, many different agents to tell you what they think your home is valued at. You could also hire an appraiser if you wanted to go a more formal route. So you really want to get that first. You don't want to go to one real estate agent, have them tell you, what their home is worth and just accept that. You definitely don't want to do that because ultimately that's your money that you'll be getting. And then you want to think about a time frame. Do you need to sell fast or can you take your time? I mean, that often affects, the pricing strategy and things like that. And then if there's anything you need to fix up, if you need to, you want to make your house look as presentable as possible, find a list of things that you need to do in order to, be able to do that, to stage it. Are there things that are going to really put off buyers that are easy to fix? All of those things will be important. And then, figure out the sort of the strategy with the pricing. And then you want to decide on a realtor to do it or to do it yourself, which is completely a viable or obviously a great way to, if you can do it yourself. And then you want to think about where you're going to move to. This is really important because obviously if you're thinking that you're going to buy a home before you sell, or, how are you going to manage the moving within the time frame that you set out?
I do have a follow-up question about that. So you mentioned talking to as many realtors as you want, and oftentimes the realtors will bring their presentation. A lot of them call it the CMA, which is a comparable market analysis, and they will tell you how much they think you should sell your house at. How do you decide? Because sometimes the price range might be very different. Maybe somebody was just, they pull comps on the market, and different realtors have different ways of pulling it. So how do you decide as a seller which realtor is the best one for your house?
I mean, I think track record is a really important one. Have they sold houses in the past? It's all public record. A lot of it you can find out just by searching. What did they actually sell? How many months was it on the market? Did it, sell for a good price? So, I mean, I would just apply that to any, hiring any professional. What is their work history? What's been their success in the past? I mean, agents generally charge around the same amount. So why not get the very best one?
That's a really good point. I love that. And as a seller, how much homework do you do before selling a home?
How much homework on what?
On everything. About where your house should be priced, or if you're staging your house, how much you use, how you approach the market, and then.
Well, I've never sold a house myself, and I think it's a really intriguing thing. So those are the two different categories. If you're going to sell it yourself, you've got to do a lot more individual homework because. You've got to figure out how to market it, who's going to buy it, all these things. If you're engaging a real estate agent, they should do all of that heavy lifting once you've decided on an agent. So what you're buying with their commission, with their sales commission is their expertise. And good agents are worth a lot of money because they'll be able to really figure out how to present it, figure out how to sell it. And all those things, and they should be doing a lot of that work for you.
That's a really excellent point. In any sort of home buying or home selling process, I do think that agent is probably your best ally here because they have to keep the pulse on the sale on the market. And they also need to have that bird's eye view to be able to see how everything is going to come together so the deal doesn't fall apart. But at the same time, they need to have attention to details to make sure that all the I's and T's are dotted and crossed. So you being a serial buyer as well. So how about buying a home? What is that process like for you when it comes to buying a house?
You mean, in terms of buying a house? So I think when you buy a home, some of the big things are really doing investigative work to investigate, the potential trouble that you might have. There's often a lot of things. If you're a seller, there are things that you ultimately may want to hide, like your noisy neighbor or your even
when you're living there, you want to hide them as well.
Right. You want to first mitigate against disasters, right? What are the big disasters you could have when you're buying a house. You could have some major repairs. Your house could, I read this fascinating thing the other day that you don't have to report whether a home has been flooded. So,
Oh,
I read that in the news. I didn't do research on it, so I'm not exactly sure if that's a state by state thing or not. But, is the foundation sound? I mean, some of these things you can't necessarily know on your own. So you really have to engage a good inspector that you should find yourself and who has a track record of being tough. Really research the area, look at, spend some time on the street itself at different times, especially if it's a noisy street, you want to get a sense of what you're getting into ahead of time. So I would say mainly it's about investigating, really potential pitfalls, and also doing your research on, making sure that you're aware of all the other possibilities for yourself, so you don't have buyer's remorse when you're done. And also making use of the appreciation tools. Like, you can download data from various data sources that tells you, what the appreciation was in a small area for the last 10 years, and just see if the trends are going up or down. If they're going down, you definitely want to find out why. And if they're going up, you want to understand what you're buying into, because depreciation is a fantastic, fantastic thing for you to have.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I really love about your book is that you pointed out some of the things that are not generally known to the homeowners. And I love the way you frame it as well, because you said by being aware of them, you can gain the necessary control over the decision-making process and feel empowered to achieve the best financial outcomes. So can you talk a little bit about what are some of the surprising facts that are not generally known to the homeowners?
Well, one of the biggest things, so as I mentioned earlier, I had developed with my company these tools that allow people to visualize homeowners' outcomes. So for sales and purchases and even just owning a home, give a short and long-term view. And one of the amazing things that we uncovered was around refinancing. And there's a lot more in the book, but just to give you a few little nuggets, the way that mortgage professionals present break even in refinancing is completely wrong. Like, the math does not work, because 95% of, I won't go too into the weeds, but the way that you buy a house, you're rolling the fees in usually. And so the calculations they give you are not accurate.
Oh.
Mind blowing. And there's a really simple way to understand it that is accurate. And then sort of the total cost of refinancing, with all the fees and things like that. So, there are these little things that, what I came to the conclusion is that there's a lot of home ownership, the financing around it is in the domain of the mortgage professionals, not in any other domain. And so there are all these little things that fall through the cracks, and it leaves it very hard for homeowners to get actually an unbiased opinion about. Another one is around selling. So and this is very intuitive, if you sell for a higher price, but you give up a larger percentage of your profit to your realtor, right? If you sell, let's say you have a 6% fee, rather than or a 5% or a 4%, if there's no co-broker, right? So you might get two offers. One of them has two brokers, so you're paying 3% to each. One of them may have none. But the one with none, the one with none where you pay less is actually, a lower, higher offer. That all ties into what your profit is. So, that's, when you're in the heat of the moment and there's a bidding war on your property and you're looking at offers, your tendency is to pick the highest offer. But what you should really be doing is looking at your profit. So it's That's really simple thing, but it's often completely lost, because the focus is, and it's driven by the agent. So you want to be aware, of your own. And the biggest thing I think is equity. Like I mentioned, home equity is a very simple formula. It's what your home is worth minus what you owe on it, and that's yours to keep. So that's your money. And I think the most powerful thing you can do as a homeowner and a home buyer is to be aware of what your home equity is at every decision point that you make. If you're refinancing or you're, getting a home equity loan, or you're, making decisions that affect your home value. If you keep your eye on what part of your home is actually yours, it's usually when you first buy a home, it's that 20%, right, that you put down. But that'll change as you pay off your mortgage and as your home appreciates or depreciates. And that's a really important piece of the puzzle.
That's a really, really good point. I think that you're absolutely right. Most of us focus on I guess, in a way, the superficial number, what is the sales price, but we don't really think about actually what is the profit after all the fees and all the payout at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can the homeowner lay the groundwork to get the best financial outcome?
Well, I think from the beginning, think about your equity. How can you protect it? How can different homes or mortgage products affect it? And it's interesting because equity is a word that I actually try not to use because it's one of those financial words that draws kind of a blank stare. Mm-hmm. So I often just say the money in your home, but just being aware of how much you have, what is the money in your home that's yours, because if you just think about it that way, then, and home ownership is a huge engine of, intergenerational wealth, actually. And so just being aware of that through these different decisions can be very powerful in and of itself. Oh, and also I would say the other huge piece is cost cutting and planning, right? There's a lot of ways as a homeowner that you can cut your costs, and to be able to do that methodically and prioritize, your costs and things and your repairs and things like that.
So can you elaborate a little bit? So what are some of the great ways for homeowners to cut costs in their home?
Well, one of the things I found is, and I actually developed a really simple, it's totally free spreadsheet. It's called the Savings Planner, and it's on our website. But basically, it's a big spreadsheet, and you put your costs in there because home ownership is, it's very affected by the seasons, whether you're in a cold or a warm climate, whether you have a garden, if you have a pool, if you have very hot summers, all of these can skew the costs of home ownership, from one season to the next. And by laying it all out and sort of recording, you don't even have to be doing it every month, but just sort of visualizing your costs over the year in different categories can allow you to look at them and allow you to cut them and think about it, because the savings planner that we have aggregates the costs, adds them all up in the right column. So you can see for a year how much you spent on your plumbing, how much you spent on your heat, how much you spent on your gardening, all these, your pets, that actually goes down into other things like your bills, like your phones. And then look at negotiating. So we made this. I did this interview with a insurance professional because homeowners insurance is a huge cost for most homeowners. And now we have, extra coverage for flood and winds and all our natural disasters. And that really adds up. So this is a way, one of the big things you can do is negotiate your costs. And if you know what your costs are for the year, for the month, for different categories, then you can really see how to negotiate them, down. And you can negotiate your insurance costs down. And that's one of the big ways that I recommend that people, really pay attention to that, because you can shave a lot of money off. And also by having it reviewed every year or every other year, you can make sure that your coverage is adequate, because I mean, I have a friend who's in the Santa Barbara, Montecito area. I mean, it's just an absolute terrorizing thing to have these, big natural disasters and not knowing if you have 100% coverage on your home, should it, be affected by any one of these many natural disasters we've been having.
Right. And you mentioned a really good thing, which is negotiating rates for insurance. So how do you go about approach that with your insurance agents?
Yeah, so we made a script. It's on our. we make things for every pain point that we find. We try to get an expert in, like you, and sort of really give a really well researched answer. So we created a script, and it's about finding your declaration page. So in your insurance, there's a declaration page, and it lists all of your coverage. And you basically take that page and you shop it around. And then there's a series of questions. You want to make sure that you're getting all the discounts that you can possibly get. You want to know that, if there's any way you can pay in a different way that can cause you to get discounts. And you want to make sure that the coverage that you have, you actually need that coverage. So one of the mistakes people make is they insure their home for a larger amount than the actual replacement cost. And that you never see that money. If you insure your house for $1 million and it only costs you $500,000 or $800,000 to actually rebuild the entire house, or much less. That's a pretty fancy house on your lot. Let's say it costs $300,000 or whatever to build it from the ground up again. So you just want to make sure that you have the right coverage and that you take it and shop it around, because again, insurance, while it's not a completely commodity business, there are differences in insurance companies in their responsiveness, and their customer service. When your house burned down, you want to make sure someone's there like immediately.
Right.
So there are differences. So we covered all that in this, but the essential pieces are the declaration page, shop it around. You actually can renegotiate your insurance every year if you want to, and making sure that you have the proper amount of coverage, that you're not overpaying. And that can shave, I've seen it, just doing that shaves 20% off of your homeowner's insurance bill for the year. And it's not hard. It sounds hard and it sounds like something you just don't have time to do. But if you look at it in terms of your costs, maybe that's $1,000 that you could use, or, $800. You could take a nice trip to, Las Vegas.
I'm super happy to hear this, because one of the things I'm super annoyed about my parents' homeowner insurance is that this happens quite often in California, or at least where my parents live, is that when there's after a huge storm, like trees will fall over. Mm-hmm. So it's in their homeowner's insurance to cover damage. Mm-hmm. But apparently the thing is, where they split hair is that the damage has to be on the actual building of the home. Mm-hmm. So this happened where this giant pine tree fell over, but it just so happened it missed the house by 1 centimeter. Mm-hmm. So even though it destroyed all the stuff going down, like the fence, the yard, basically, like some long furniture got knocked over, but because it actually didn't touch the house, we were not able to get any money. Because usually when the tree damages the house, at whatever capacity, they would fix everything, including removing the tree. But in this case, then we have to be out of pocket to remove that tree from our yard and then deal with all the stuff in the garden. So I was like super annoyed about it. Now that I'm hearing you say this, I'm going to go home. I'm going to ask my mom to pull out her declaration page and renegotiate that.
Yes. And you can actually she could take that, go to another company. Well, first she could call her own company and say, I'm going to be negotiating this with another company.
I love it.
Is there anything you can do for me before I go, negotiate it? So that's a route too. You should negotiate with your own company and see if, especially if you have a competing offer, tell them that you're going to leave unless they, give you a better deal. But yeah, you can take that. And actually, there's a lot of innovation in insurance right now. And there's a lot of different categories of new types of insurance that you could get. I even heard about drone insurance. So if you have a drone, you can insure your drone in case your drone, causes damage to someone. So there are other policies that you could get, if your insurance company doesn't cover it, or if it's too expensive, there's some add-on things that you could see if you could get. Usually home insurance is to protect the home, because that's what the mortgage and the bank, the bank has a requirement for you to protect that home that they have a mortgage on, which you would think they'd also want to protect the property, because that's part of the, the cost, but it's all tied in. But there are ways to get around that, or to clarify it. And there's other areas that are very confusing to people, like the sewer system isn't often part of your insurance, So for example, I had to get extra insurance on my sewer line. It's not very expensive, but I'm glad I have it, because if that were to need repair, that's many, many thousands of dollars.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think we were lucky in the sense where it happened to my parents' house, like the sewer system had issue, but it turned out that it was happening at the same time where the city the city that they live in figured out it was actually the city's fault that they didn't do some sort of backflow system. So every house in the city were able to get fixed free of cost.
That's great.
But otherwise, we would have been, like you said, out of thousands of dollars out of pocket to be able to fix the back. Because sewer is difficult because you had to dig it up. You had to dig everything up, and then they had to fix it from there. And because it's underground, so it's very expensive to do. So yeah, so like I'm really glad we're talking about all this. I'm like already thinking like what to call my mom when I call her tomorrow. I'll be like, do you know like we can renegotiate our insurance this way? And then the other thing I really love about your book is that I love that it's really detailed, like it explains the math, but it also addresses the emotional side and the emotional ties to the home from both buyer's view and also the seller's point of view, and as well as leveraging the home as a financial tool. So I love that you have both sides of this. But where do you draw that balance? So obviously we want to enjoy our home and make it ours. So people can be doing customization, like remodeling for their personal taste, which personally for me, on the selling point of view, it's really great for the return on investment for their emotional reason. But most of the time what I've seen with remodels, unless you're doing a very straightforward kitchen and bath remodel that is appealing to a broad range of buyer, usually people are not really going to get return on investment back. Because most of the customization I see by the time they're ready to sell the house is, custom tile work, which can be a very specific color that does not appeal to the market. I had a homeowner who loves peach. So everything in the house is peach. And she also had very personalized bathroom tile in her home. Like she had many dogs, so a lot of them had dog footprints in them. She purposely had that done. But when it comes to selling, those are very difficult features to sell. So how can a homeowner find that balance when it comes to financial decision that may impact their resale value?
So I think so if you want to impact the real estate value, then you just want to be really aware of your market. So different markets have different things that raise the value. And that's, again, sort of this hyper local or local concept of your price range, right? So if you have a home maybe in the $200,000 range and you're putting in, a $30,000 wine cellar, in the basement, you're maybe not going to find a lot of buyers who would have spent the money that way. Maybe you'd add another room or you do something else. So there's you want to be aware of the particular market that you're in. Is the market that you're in a market where, you need a bathroom off the master, a bathroom en suite in the master bedroom? Does that appeal to the market? Does having an extra bathroom in general appeal to the market? So there's strategic ways that you can do your home improvement based on what the market wants that you're in. The other side of the question is maybe I just really want a tiger striped kitchen. Maybe
I've seen tiger stripe bathrooms. So yeah, there are people out there who love that.
Yeah, and I think that's completely, legitimate if you're going to be in your house for a long time, especially, to your point, trends change. So the colors of one era, the super stainless steel, super white, of the last decade, sort of that aesthetic, it's changing a bit too. It's getting more natural, or, there's different things. So if you're going to be in your home a long time, particularly, I think it makes sense to customize it the way you want to live in it, because you're not going to benefit, who can predict the future really? And everything's going to have wear and tear. But if you're going to sell soon, then you really, or you're planning to sell, you want to make sure that you're doing it accordingly. And I would also put in that category, adding square footage. If you're in an area that doesn't have a lot of huge houses and you add a huge addition, but no one's who wants that much space is going to be looking in your area. That's maybe that wouldn't be a good thing to do particularly.
Yeah, we have a saying in real estate is that don't be the nicest house on the block, because for that specific reason, it's really hard to find comps for your sale. And the other thing too is people probably cannot afford that kind of home in that neighborhood if you're sticking out the norm too much.
Yeah, I'll tell you the corollary or similar thing for New York is buy the worst apartment in the best building.
Yes. That's a really good point. I mean, I've seen, that's the thing. I think that there's the emotional side of return on investment and also monetary side. And I think with a homeowner, that is a very personal decision. But I have several clients where it was their dream home and something unexpected happened and they had to sell the house. And the houses where they had a lot of customized, personal decoration choices were very difficult to sell because they were very specific to a specific family's taste. And so when it comes on the market, it becomes very difficult to sell. And also because they put in all this customization, so they think that because I just spent an extra $100,000, for example, into my kitchen, I should be able to get $100,000 back. That's not true. No. Because once you put something new in, it's just like luxury items. Once you bought a Chanel purse, for example, that thing is just depreciated. Mm-hmm. So when you resell it, even if you just own it for one day, it's not going to get that resale value as it were brand new. Mm-hmm. It's the same with remodel. Remodel usually take a few years for you to really get the return on investment back. And a lot of return on investment has to tie into the more emotional side of things. Especially, things do go outdated. Like you mentioned, swimming pool was really cool in the 90s, but now it's a bit more difficult to sell a home with swimming pool unless you live in very difficult, like very hot weather area, like Las Vegas, for example. Mm-hmm.
Well, I would California, what I read very interesting data. I think it was from Renovation Magazine, and they did a lot of statistics on ROI for return on investment for different home improvements. And one of the points, I don't actually know if it was from them or some other sources that I was reading at the time, but one of the things that I thought was fascinating is that the return on improvement is changes depending on how hot your market is. So like in San Francisco, which has seen, exponential appreciation in the past 5 years, or mm-hmm. Seattle, adding a kitchen or updating a kitchen or updating a bathroom can actually return more than 100% of the ROI, whereas that's not true at all for other areas where it returns maybe 60%. And the only one that I found that consistently returned more than 100 was energy related type improvements, because then you're getting cost savings, right?
Yes.
So energy improvement is one where you can see significant ROI, like insulating your roof.
Yes.
Like, things that make a big difference.
That's the thing. People want to shave costs of maintaining a home. So I think that's why energy efficient appliances or updates are really always great in terms of ROI.
Yeah.
But I think cosmetic types of fixes, like even with kitchen and bath updates, these are the most important parts in the home. But the thing is, kitchen and bath updates can be either really good or really bad. That's the thing, because it depends. If you update the kitchen based on the current trend and it looks incredible and it's a beautiful show kitchen that Architecture Digest or Dwell magazine want to photograph, then you'll definitely get your return on investment back. But if it's a kitchen where you put in a lot of personalized specification, like we had this one client who put in a pasta arm, and they apparently eat a lot of fried food, so they have a fry section in their kitchen. Those are kind of investments that probably are not going to get that return on investment back, even though they use kind of the top of a line pasta arm or fryer kind of thing, because not every family is going to want that. And especially for that specific house I'm thinking about, they're in the starter home market, so they're basically the most expensive house on the block, which made it also very difficult to sell. They had a lot of customized decorating choices, like they put glitter in their paint, for example, in certain areas of the home. And those finishes are difficult to remove, and they were not willing to repaint. So I think it depends. Like, I think when you're doing kitchen and bath remodel, the classic choices usually get you more return on investment.
That's absolutely true. I think people are also very disappointed and shocked and hurt, to be honest, when they find out that they're, what they spent a lot of money on and was to their personal preference and maybe overspent, isn't to the taste of someone, and then they're going to go and rip it out. And that can be a big letdown.
So I think that is the emotional factor at play. And one of the things that you mentioned in the book is you talk about both real estate investors and residential homeowners. So what is the main difference between the two? Do you think it's really coming down to the emotions side of things? Because I'm assuming real estate investor is more about math, right? It's more about the dollar and the return on investment.
Yeah, so I know a lot of real estate investors, from the fix and flip to, sort of the larger ones. And it all comes down to how much money, you get out of it. So it's how little money you can put in and how much money you can get out. And that's really it. So an investor will look at, maybe you don't want to live on that busy corner in a nice neighborhood that has, a lot of icky things, an icky fence and, not a great yard and, these things that really make it hard to sell to a family or an individual who's looking to move into that area. But an investor will look at it and just, it's all black and white. I bought this for X amount. It cost me X amount to finance it for the amount of time it'll take me to sell it. If I do these things to it, then I can sell it for, this other amount of money. And, there's different types of investors. Some investors buy buildings and they rent out apartments and things like that. But, it really comes down to thinking purely about the money in and out and not about how close you are, like to your Aunt Susie.
Right. So I know you also interview a lot of home buyers. So what are some of the findings that you found out through your interviews? And does buyers usually buy based on emotions instead of their financial analysis?
Yes. I mean, I did. I have to say, you buy, and you should buy a house. You're spending so much money there. You might as well buy something that you enjoy being in. Yes. And I think that, often that's overlooked as a benefit of home ownership. A lot of people buy because they just want control over their environment. They want they want to be able to not worry that they're going to get kicked out. There's a lot of different levels of emotion, in terms of the size of the house, what it looks like, where it is, the stability aspect. I think it's a basic human need or desire to have a stability, and some people want to really control and create an environment for themselves. So I think it always has a emotional component, but it's not bad to have that. I think you're naturally going to have an emotional component. You also want to have the financial, so they go hand in hand. I mean, certainly you don't want to buy with outside of your means, and then you're emotionally very stressed out. Emotion can also be terrible emotion if you don't do your financial analysis.
No, I totally agree with that. And I know you read a lot of research as well about home as an investment. So what have you found? What does the research say?
So I love this area of research. There's not a lot of sources of the research, but there are some really good sources and long-term research studies about home ownership. And I think one of the interesting things is that, it's a very powerful, as I mentioned before, intergenerational wealth builder. And sort of the reason for that, in one sense, is because there's many things about it. The biggest thing is forced savings. So, you're paying down your mortgage, you have to make the payment. A portion of that is going to pay down the mortgage, which raises your equity, which means when you sell, you'll owe less and you'll make more money. That money that you're paying into your mortgage, if you didn't have a mortgage and you were renting, maybe you would have to spend it on medical bills or your cell phone bill, these other things that you have to pay, and maybe not have the ability or the diligence to put it away in the same way. So that's a hugely powerful mechanism of home ownership. There's another big thing that's often not talked about, which is in this time of quick home appreciation that we've been in for the last 6 years or so, or 5 years, rents are also increasing, and so homeownership is a hedge against rising rents, because if you get a 30-year fixed mortgage, your payment is stable. In 10 years, you're paying the same amount. I mean, your property tax is going up, but not nearly the same amount. And you're not, you're a buffer against increasing rents, and that's incredibly powerful. Because especially I'm sure in your area and certainly in our area, before I bought, I was a renter for a few years and my rent was going up like even 10% a year. I mean, it can go up very quickly. So those are some of the things there's other studies that show that homeowners, have more net worth. And for whatever reason, I didn't really dig into that. Seems kind of like, you may be more able to become a homeowner. I don't know what the exact cause and effect is on that, but one of the other things is that education of children is higher for homeowners and with the same economic level, which is important to put that filter on it. So within the same economic level or socioeconomic group, homeowners' children are more educated than non-homeowners. So there's some interesting things, but over time, it can be a really powerful wealth builder for the reasons of forced savings, and also you put down a relatively small amount of money, and if your home appreciates, you get all of that appreciation.
Yeah, I think these are all really good points, especially the rising rent, because I think about my own renting history. I moved out of San Francisco about, I think, 4 years ago. And at the time when I moved out, my rent was $1,800 for a one bedroom. And because it was so, because the market was getting so crazy in terms of rent, because all the startups are coming in. Mm-hmm. I think once I moved out, they doubled the rent. And then the last time I've heard, this, my friend is the building manager, my apartment is now renting at $5,000 a month.
Yeah.
And that is more than a lot of people's mortgages, I think. And so I think that's a really good point, where your mortgage is a very set, stable number compared to the rental market, where if you're in the very volatile rental market like San Francisco Bay Area, you know, the landlord basically has all the control in terms of raising the price, unless you're in a rent control apartment.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what are some of the factors that make your home a bad investment, or some of the factors that make your home a great investment?
So there's sort of, you know, the inverse of each other. So, you know, low costs versus too high costs. You know, obviously if you're, you know, in the example I gave earlier of, you know, your foundation is compromised. Well, that's really going to be a terrible thing for you in terms of your overall, you know, costs in versus profit. And so that's, you know, buying a quality home is important. Negative appreciation. So, you know, home prices don't always go up. We have, none of us, I don't think, have forgotten recession. So 2008. And so one of the hedges against that is to keep your home a long time, because you don't know exactly what part of the buying cycle you're in. If you knew that, you would be very, very wealthy, and we all would be. But we don't know exactly what part of the buying cycle. Are we in a high point now? You know, is it going to go way, way down? You don't know. But if you keep your home longer term, you can buffer against, you know, the market swings a little bit better. So that's another reason why you should buy a house that will suit your needs down the road, rather than, you know, one just for the next couple of years. You know, if you're single and you really want to have a family, you might really think about what size home you could get away with, you know, having for a longer period of time, and so on. So, and then the other piece of that is, you know, is the hyper local sort of appreciation. You know, if you buy in an area, some areas actually haven't recovered from 2008 because they're simply not popular anymore. They have, you know, things have happened where people don't want to go there, or don't want to buy there as much as another area. So, if you buy in an area that's not appreciating very much, then that would make it a worse investment.
That's very true. And so before we get to the last question for the show today, can you tell us where our audience can find you and how can they find your book?
Yes. So the company is called Homeownering. So it's homeowner with an ING, and we have homeownering.com as the domain. And in there, you'll find lots of resources. And we also have a newsletter that goes out once every 2 weeks. And we really try to find, and you'll be in ours this Sunday, but we try to find the best experts. And I'm very, very proud of our content. I don't think there's anywhere else, frankly, that you can get the same high quality deep dives on the topics that we cover anywhere. But the book is called, and this actually changed from the draft copy that you have, but this book is identical. It's called Avoid the Money Pit, Turn Your Home into a Financial Powerhouse. And that was actually a title that was chosen from the readers.
Oh, cool.
About what the book is actually about is avoiding the money pit and turning your home into a financial powerhouse. And we have a link on our site called The Book. It just says The Book. So you can go to our site, click on the link, The Book, and you can read all about it. And if you buy the book, then, and I don't know if I've mentioned to you this yet, and you're certainly included in this, we have a whole online member site that you can use as resources, and we put all kinds of tools in there that aren't in the book even.
Oh, that's great. That's really good to know. Because I really highly recommend the book, because a lot of times, like, financial information are very dry, and I don't find that for your book at all. I think your book is very personable and very informative. I certainly learned a lot. Just at least the basic concept of home equity and kind of looking at finance in a different way, which I really, really appreciated.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah. And so my last question for you on the show today, what is the one tip that you're going to give to homeowners in regards to maximizing their value of their home?
I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's about knowing what your home equity is or how much money is in your home, and just it's so simple to think about it that way. But it really can. Once you know that, you don't have to learn a lot of the other things. I'm always really interested in shortcuts, so that's one little shortcut is just to be aware of that. And basically every decision you make does affect that one way or the other. So, and I just want people to, have control over their home as a financial asset.
That's great. Thank you again so much for being on the show today. I really, really appreciate it. You being so amazing and so informative. I'm sure our audience learned a lot about home equity and then buying a home and selling a home as well.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you and have a great day. And thank you for everyone who's been on the live call today. I really appreciate your presence. So bye and have a good day, guys. So that's it for the show. Thank you so much for listening. You want to help and support the show, there are 3 ways to do so. You can leave a review and rating on iTunes. You can share the show on social media, or you can donate to support the hosting costs for the website and the podcast. You can now make a donation through the show notes on the sidebar of our website. So thanks so much again for listening. Have a wonderful week and happy staging. And don't forget to check out our show sponsor. Our show is brought to you by the Staging Assistant. It's more than an inventory system. Manage your leads, your proposals, your clients, and your stage houses on your desktop, tablet, or phone. With the Staging Assistant, you will know what you own, where it is, and when it's returning quickly and easily. Create your design and packing list from the comfort of your home so you can hit the ground running when you go into your warehouse. Created by stagers specifically for stagers, it's the only tool you need to manage your growing staging business. For more information, visit stagingassistant.com.